In the far edges of the Orion Arm, beyond the peaceful trade routes and quiet star systems, there existed a powerful empire feared across the galaxy. It was called the Zaryth Empire. For centuries, the Zaryth had conquered planet after planet, adding entire civilizations to their rule. Their soldiers were known for their strength, their discipline, and their brutal pride. In the capital city of their empire stood a massive structure that symbolized their power, a gigantic battle arena built from dark metal and glowing energy walls, where warriors proved their strength before the queen and the people of the empire. On this day, the arena was more crowded than ever. Thousands of alien citizens filled the towering stands that surrounded the battlefield. Nobles, commanders, soldiers, and civilians had all come to watch something special. The air was full of excitement and loud voices. Giant banners of the empire hung from the arena walls, moving slowly in the artificial wind. Above everything, high on a floating throne platform, sat the ruler of the empire, Queen Zaryth. Her eyes were calm but sharp as she watched the arena below. At the center of the battlefield stood the empire's most famous warrior, General Krax. He was enormous even by Zaryth standards. His body was covered in heavy black battle armor, scratched and marked from hundreds of victories. A long scar crossed one side of his face, a reminder of a battle he had survived many years ago. Across the galaxy, his name was spoken with fear and respect. Krax had defeated warriors from dozens of species. Entire armies had fallen before him. To the Zaryth people, he was not just a soldier. He was a symbol of their superiority. The crowd cheered loudly as Krax slowly walked across the arena floor. Each step echoed through the massive structure. He raised one armored hand, and the cheering became even louder. Krax enjoyed the attention. Pride filled his voice as he began speaking to the crowd, telling them stories of his victories across distant worlds. He spoke about battles against reptilian war clans, machine armies, and giant creatures from savage planets. Every story made the crowd roar with excitement. Then Krax began speaking about a new enemy that had recently appeared near the Empire's borders. A young species from a small blue planet called Earth. Humans. His voice was full of laughter as he described them. He told the crowd that humans were weak creatures with soft bodies and short lives. He said they depended on machines because their bodies were too fragile for real combat. The audience laughed with him, believing every word. To them, humans were just another minor species that would soon be crushed by the Empire. Krax walked to the center of the arena and spread his arms proudly. He loudly declared that he had already killed several human soldiers in recent border battles. According to him, none of them had survived more than a few seconds against a true Zaryth warrior. The crowd shouted his name again and again. Krax, Krax, Krax. Their voices thundered through the arena like a storm. But then something unexpected happened. One of the arena gates slowly opened. The heavy metal doors moved aside with a deep mechanical sound. Several Zaryth guards walked into the arena, and between them was a single prisoner, a human soldier. The cheering slowly faded as the guards pushed the human forward. Compared to Krax, the human looked small and unimpressive. He wore a simple military uniform that was damaged from battle. There was no advanced armor, no powerful weapon, and no sign of fear on his face. His hands were restrained with glowing energy cuffs, but his posture was calm. His eyes quietly studied the arena around him. Krax stared at the human for a moment, then burst into loud laughter. The sound echoed across the arena walls. He walked closer to the prisoner, looking down at him like a giant looking at an insect. He mocked the human in front of the entire crowd and proudly announced that this would be the shortest fight the arena had ever seen. The queen watched silently from above, her expression unreadable. The guards removed the human's restraints and stepped away. The human slowly moved his wrists and looked up at Krax. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The entire arena had become strangely quiet. Thousands of eyes were focused on the two figures standing on the battlefield. Krax leaned closer and said loudly, so everyone could hear, that humans should have stayed on their tiny planet instead of challenging the Zaryth Empire. The human soldier finally spoke, his voice calm and steady. You really don't know what humans can do." A strange tension filled the arena. The confidence in the human's voice was not what the crowd expected. Instead of fear, there was something else in his eyes, something quiet but dangerous. High above, Queen Zaryth leaned slightly forward on her throne, suddenly interested in what was about to happen. And far away among the cheering crowd, a few alien commanders exchanged uneasy looks because something about this human felt different from the stories they had heard. Before the battle truly begins, if you enjoy stories like this, consider subscribing to this channel so you never miss the next chapter of humanity's fight among the stars. Because what happens in this arena today will be remembered across the galaxy for a very long time. The silence inside the arena slowly grew heavier. Just a few moments earlier, the crowd had been shouting and laughing, but now thousands of alien voices had become quiet. The human soldier stood alone on the dark metal floor of the arena, while the giant warrior of the Zaryth Empire watched him with amusement. High above them, the glowing energy walls of the arena shimmered like distant lightning, casting soft blue light across the battlefield. General Krax slowly began to circle the human. His heavy armored footsteps echoed with deep metallic sounds that could be heard in every corner of the arena. To Krax, this moment felt like a performance rather than a battle. He had fought warriors far larger and stronger than this small human. To him, the human looked fragile, almost harmless. The difference in their size alone made the outcome seem obvious. Krax stopped only a few steps away from the human soldier and leaned slightly forward. The alien warrior's glowing eyes studied the human carefully, as if he were looking at a strange animal he had never seen before. The crowd waited, expecting the human to panic or beg for mercy, or at least show fear. But the human did none of those things. He simply stood there calmly, breathing slowly, his eyes moving across the arena, as if he were memorizing everything around him. He noticed the positions of the guards. He noticed the distance between himself and Krax. He noticed the structure of the arena walls and the energy shields above. Every small detail seemed to matter to him. Krax noticed this and laughed again, though this time his laughter carried a small hint of irritation. "You look around like a lost traveler," Krax said loudly so the audience could hear him. "But there is nowhere for you to run, human." The human soldier finally looked directly at the giant warrior, his face still calm, his voice steady. "I'm not looking for a place to run," he said quietly. Some of the alien spectators exchanged confused glances. The human's voice was not loud, yet it somehow carried clearly across the arena. There was no fear in it, only quiet confidence. High above, Queen Zaryth continued watching carefully. Her long silver cloak moved slightly in the artificial wind as she rested one hand on the arm of her throne. She had watched thousands of battles inside this arena during her reign. She knew the behavior of warriors very well. She knew how fear looked, how desperation looked, how anger looked. But this human showed none of those things. General Krax stretched his massive arms and activated parts of his battle armor. Soft red lights appeared across the surface of the armor as its power systems awakened. The crowd began cheering again as the warrior prepared for combat. Many spectators expected the fight to end in seconds, but the strange silence around the human continued to create an uncomfortable feeling among some of the commanders watching from the front rows. One of them leaned slightly toward another and whispered, "That human does not act like a prisoner." The other commander quietly replied, "Perhaps he does not understand the situation." Down in the arena, Krax slowly raised one large hand and pointed directly at the human. "Tell me your name before I crush you," the warrior demanded, his voice echoing with arrogance. For a brief moment, the human said nothing. He looked up toward the towering stands filled with thousands of alien faces watching him. Many of them looked amused. Many looked curious. Some looked hungry for violence. Then the human spoke again. "My name will not matter to you," he said calmly. "But remember that I stood here." The strange answer caused another wave of murmurs across the arena. Krax tilted his head slightly, as if trying to understand the meaning behind the words. To him, it sounded like pointless bravery, the kind soldiers sometimes showed when they believed death was near. Krax raised his arms wide and shouted proudly to the crowd. You see this creature before you. This is one of the humans who dared challenge the Zaryth Empire. Watch closely, because in a few moments this will be the fate of every human who stands against us. The crowd responded with loud cheering once again. The energy of the arena grew stronger as thousands of voices echoed through the structure. But through all the noise, the human soldier remained perfectly still. He took one slow breath and gently rolled his shoulders as if preparing for a long journey rather than a deadly fight. A small drop of blood from an earlier wound slowly moved down the side of his face, but he did not seem to notice it. General Krax finally stepped closer, towering above him like a mountain of metal and muscle. The warrior lowered his head slightly and spoke in a colder voice, one meant only for the human to hear. You are either very brave or very foolish, Krax said quietly. The human looked directly into the alien's glowing eyes. Humans have survived worse things than foolish warriors, he replied softly. For the first time since entering the arena, something changed in General Krax's expression. It was not fear, but it was no longer pure amusement either. Something about the human's calm confidence created a small crack in the warrior's certainty. High above them, Queen Zaryth leaned forward just a little more, her sharp eyes studying every movement, every word, every reaction. Because deep inside her instincts as a ruler and strategist, a quiet thought had begun to form. If this human was truly as weak as Krax claimed, then why did he stand in the center of the Empire's greatest arena, looking completely unafraid of death? The strange silence that followed the human's words spread slowly across the massive arena. Only moments ago, the crowd had been shouting with excitement, but now many of the alien spectators leaned forward in their seats, watching the small human standing before the Empire's greatest warrior. Something about him did not feel right. He looked injured, unarmed, and completely outmatched, yet there was no sign of panic in his posture. Instead, the human stood calmly, his breathing steady, his eyes focused, as if this moment had been expected for a very long time. General Krax slowly straightened his massive body. His armor lights glowed brighter as the power systems inside the suit continued to wake. The giant warrior looked down at the human again, studying him more carefully now. At first, Krax had seen only a weak creature, a fragile enemy meant for easy entertainment. But the human's calm expression began to create a strange feeling deep inside the warrior's mind, a feeling he had not experienced in many battles: uncertainty. Krax did not like that feeling. You speak boldly for a prisoner, Krax said in a louder voice, so the entire arena could hear him again. Most beings beg for mercy when they stand where you stand now. The human soldier slightly tilted his head as if considering the statement. His eyes moved across the arena, stands once more, taking in the thousands of alien faces watching him like spectators at a cruel game. Many were smiling, waiting for violence. Others looked curious, wondering how long the human would survive. Then the human spoke again, his voice still calm. Begging would not change the outcome. He said simply. The answer created a ripple of whispers among the crowd. Some spectators laughed again, but the laughter sounded less confident than before. The alien commanders sitting closer to the arena floor had become unusually quiet. They had studied many enemy species during their careers, and something about this human's behavior felt different for what the Empire's reports had described. High above them, Queen Zaryth raised one elegant hand slightly. The subtle movement caused several royal guards standing near her throne to become alert. The queen's sharp eyes never left the arena floor. She was not smiling like many of the spectators. Instead, she watched the human soldier with deep curiosity. Why are you not afraid? The queen suddenly asked, her voice carried across the arena by hidden speakers, clear and commanding. The unexpected question immediately silenced the remaining whispers. Thousands of eyes turned toward the small human again, waiting for his answer. Even General Krax glanced briefly toward the royal throne before returning his attention to the prisoner. The human soldier looked up toward the queen's floating platform. For a moment, he seemed to study her just as carefully as he had studied the arena itself. Then he answered in the same calm tone. "Because fear does not help soldiers survive," he said. A few spectators laughed again, but others remained silent. The queen leaned slightly forward on her throne, her interest growing stronger. "Every creature fears death," she continued, "even warriors." The human thought about the words for a brief moment before replying. "Yes," he said quietly, "but humans learn to walk forward even when we are afraid." The answer caused another wave of murmurs through the crowd. It was not the dramatic speech many had expected. The humans spoke in simple words, yet there was a quiet strength inside them that was difficult to ignore. General Krax suddenly stepped closer, clearly annoyed that the attention of the arena had shifted away from him. His armored foot struck the arena floor with a loud metallic sound that echoed across the battlefield. The giant warrior pointed directly at the human again, his glowing eyes filled with anger now. "You speak too much for someone who will die today," Krax growled. The human did not move away from him. Instead, he slowly flexed his hands, stretching his fingers as if preparing his muscles. The movement was small, almost casual, yet caught the attention of several commanders watching from the front rows. One of them whispered again to his companion, "Look at his hands." The other commander narrowed his eyes, finally noticing something strange. The human's hands were not shaking. They were steady, controlled, prepared. Down in the arena, Krax noticed the same thing. His irritation began turning into real anger now. The human was supposed to look terrified, but instead he behaved like a trained fighter preparing for a challenge. Krax raised one armored hand and signaled to the guard standing near the arena gates. "Remove his restraints," the warrior ordered. The guards hesitated for only a moment before obeying. The glowing energy cuffs around the human's wrists flickered and disappeared. For the first time since entering the arena, the human soldier stood completely free. A low wave of excitement passed through the crowd again. Now the real fight could begin. The human slowly rolled his shoulders again and looked at Krax with quiet focus. He did not charge forward or take an aggressive stance. Instead, he simply adjusted his balance and stood ready, his posture relaxed but alert. Krax laughed once more, though the laughter sounded sharper now. "You think freedom will save you?" the warrior mocked. "You cannot defeat a Zaryth warrior with your bare hands." The human finally allowed a small smile to appear on his face, though it lasted only a second. "I am not trying to defeat a Zaryth warrior," he replied calmly. The statement confused many spectators immediately. Krax frowned, clearly irritated by the strange answer. "Then what are you trying to do?" the giant alien demanded. The human soldier looked around the massive arena one more time. His eyes moved across the endless crowd, the towering walls, and finally back to the warrior standing in front of him. Then he gave his answer. "I'm trying to survive," he said quietly. For a brief moment, the entire arena became silent again, because something about the way the human said those simple words made them sound far more dangerous than anyone expected. A deep mechanical sound echoed through the arena as the battle signal lights slowly turned from blue to bright crimson. The moment the red light appeared above the battlefield, every soldier and citizen in the arena understood the meaning. The fight had officially begun. Thousands of alien spectators leaned forward with excitement, waiting to see the human crushed within seconds. For them, this was entertainment, another short display of the Empire's power. General Krax did not move immediately. The giant warrior stood still for a moment, staring down at the human soldier as if giving him one final chance to understand the hopelessness of the situation. His armored body towered over the human like a dark metal wall. The lights across his battle suit glowed brighter as the armor adjusted to combat mode. Power readings flashed inside the warrior's helmet, while hidden weapons systems quietly activated. Across from him, the human soldier remained calm. His stance was simple and balanced, his feet placed firmly on the arena floor. He did not raise his fists in an aggressive way like many fighters would. Instead, he stood relaxed, his arms slightly loose at his sides, his eyes carefully watching every small movement Krax made. To most spectators, he looked unprepared, but a few experienced commanders in the front rows noticed something different. The human was not standing casually. He was measuring distance, timing, and space. Then Krax moved. Without warning, the giant alien lunged forward with terrifying speed. His massive arm swung through the air like a falling metal hammer, aimed directly at the human's head. The crowd roared with excitement, certain that the fight would end instantly. A strike like that had shattered the armor of warriors from far stronger species. But the human moved first. In a quick motion, he stepped sideways just before the blow landed. Krax's fist smashed into the arena floor instead, creating a loud metallic shock that echoed across the stadium. Sparks flew from the ground where the armored fist struck. The impact alone was strong enough to make nearby spectators gasp. The human had avoided it by only a small distance. For a moment, the crowd became confused. Many had not even noticed the human move. They simply saw Krax's attack miss its target. General Krax slowly pulled his armored hand from the floor and turned his glowing eyes toward the human again. His expression inside the helmet changed slightly. It was not surprise yet, but it was close. "You were lucky," Krax said with irritation. The human did not answer. He simply adjusted his footing again, keeping his attention focused entirely on the warrior. Krax attacked again, this time faster. His other arm swung forward in a wide strike, designed to crush the human's entire body. The movement was brutal and powerful. Many spectators could feel the air shift from the speed of the attack. Once again, the human moved. He leaned backward, just enough for the strike to pass inches in front of his chest. The enormous arm cut through empty air before slamming into the arena barrier with a thunderous crash. The energy shield protecting the walls flashed brightly from the impact. Now the crowd began whispering loudly. 2 attacks had missed. That almost never happened in this arena. High above the battlefield, Queen Zaryth watched closely, her sharp eyes following every step of the human. She noticed how carefully he moved, how he never wasted energy, how his eyes constantly studied Krax's movements. Down below, Krax was beginning to lose patience. "You cannot run forever," the warrior growled. The human finally spoke again, his voice calm despite the danger surrounding him. "I am not running," he said quietly. Before Krax could respond, the human suddenly moved forward for the first time. The motion was quick and unexpected. Instead of retreating, the human stepped inside the warrior's reach and delivered a sharp strike against Krax's armored side. The impact itself did almost nothing to the heavy armor. But the action shocked the crowd more than the attack itself. The human had chosen to strike back. General Krax stepped backward slightly, more from surprise than damage. He looked down at the small dent left on the surface of his armor where the human had struck him. The mark was tiny, almost meaningless, but the act of defiance was enough to ignite the warrior's anger. "You dare strike me?" Krax roared. The arena erupted with loud voices as the crowd sensed that the fight was becoming more interesting than expected. Many spectators now stood from their seats, eager to see what would happen next. The human soldier slowly stepped back into his balanced stance again. His breathing remained steady, though small drops of sweat had begun to appear on his forehead. He knew very well that a single mistake would end the fight instantly. But he also knew something Krax did not understand yet. Every attack Krax made revealed something. His speed, his timing, the small delays in his armor's movement. The human's eyes carefully recorded each detail. Krax charged again with greater force than before, launching a rapid series of brutal strikes designed to overwhelm the smaller fighter. Each blow could destroy bone and armor alike. Yet the human kept moving. Step by step, strike by strike, he dodged, leaned, and shifted away from the attacks. Sometimes the blows missed him by only a few inches. Sometimes the shock of the impact against the arena floor shook the ground beneath his feet. The crowd watched with growing disbelief. The human was still standing. And for the first time in many years, the Empire's greatest warrior had not ended a fight in the first few seconds. General Krax finally stopped attacking for a brief moment, his glowing eyes locked onto the human soldier once again. His breathing was calm, but his mind was beginning to realize something strange. This human was not simply avoiding his attacks. He was studying them. High above, Queen Zaryth slowly leaned forward on her throne again, her interest now fully captured by the battle below. Because the fight that was supposed to end quickly had only just begun, and the small human standing in the center of the arena was starting to look far more dangerous than anyone in the Empire had expected. General Krax stood still in the center of the arena for a moment, his glowing eyes locked onto the human soldier standing several steps away. The arena lights reflected across the surface of his heavy battle armor as the giant warrior slowly lifted his head. Around them, the massive stadium remained filled with restless whispers. The spectators could all feel that something unusual was happening. This fight was not ending the way everyone had expected. The human soldier stood quietly, breathing slowly while keeping his eyes fixed on Krax. His body showed signs of strain now. His uniform was torn in several places, and dust from the arena floor covered parts of his face. But his posture remained steady. Every muscle in his body stayed ready to move at any moment. Krax finally spoke again, his deep voice echoing across the battlefield. "You keep moving like a small animal," he growled, "but sooner or later you will slow down. Every creature does." The human wiped a small line of blood from the corner of his mouth and answered calmly. "Maybe," he said, "but humans are used to lasting longer than expected." The strange confidence in his voice made several commanders in the audience exchange worried looks again. Reports about humans had always described them as physically weaker than most advanced species in the galaxy. Their bones were fragile compared to the armored bodies of the Zaryth. Their muscles were smaller. Their bodies lacked natural weapons like claws or thick skin. Yet here, one human stood, still fighting against a warrior who had defeated creatures twice his size. Krax suddenly rushed forward again, his patience finally running out. This time he attacked with a rapid combination of brutal strikes designed to overwhelm the human completely. His armored arms moved like giant metal hammers, each blow powerful enough to crack the arena floor. The human dodged the first attack, then the second. He slid under the third strike and barely avoided the fourth. Each movement was fast but controlled, as if his body had already predicted what Krax would do next. But the fifth attack was too close. Krax's armored shoulder slammed into the human's side, throwing him several meters across the arena floor. The human rolled hard across the metal ground before finally stopping near the edge of the battlefield. A loud cheer exploded from the crowd. Many spectators believed the fight was finally over. The power of that single strike could break bones. The human remained still for a moment, lying on the cold metal floor while dust slowly settled around him. Krax straightened proudly, raising one arm toward the audience as the cheers grew louder. "You see," the warrior shouted, "this is the strength of the Zaryth Empire." But the cheering suddenly weakened when the human slowly began to move again. He pushed himself up from the floor with visible effort. One of his hands pressed against his ribs as he stood. The pain was clear now. His breathing had become heavier, and his steps were slower than before. Yet he was still standing. The arena slowly became quiet again. High above, Queen Zaryth watched the injured human carefully. Most fighters would already be unconscious after a strike like that. Some species would have died instantly. Yet this human soldier forced himself upright again, even though the pain was clearly severe. Krax noticed it too, and irritation quickly turned into anger. "You should stay down," Krax growled, walking slowly toward him. "Your body is not built for battles like this." The human lifted his head and looked at the approaching giant warrior. His eyes were tired now, but the quiet determination inside them had not disappeared. "That's true," the human admitted, his voice slightly strained. "Humans are not built like warriors." The answer confused Krax for a moment. "Then why do you continue fighting?" the alien demanded. The human took one slow breath before answering. "Because humans are built for something else," he said quietly. Krax stopped walking, narrowing his glowing eyes. And what is that? The human looked around the arena briefly, glancing at the thousands of alien faces watching him struggle to remain standing. Then he returned his gaze to the warrior in front of him. Endurance, he said. Some of the spectators laughed again, but the sound was uncertain. The human continued speaking, his voice calm even through the pain. Humans come from a dangerous world. Our planet tried to kill us for thousands of years. Storms, predators, disease, hunger, war. We survived all of it. Not because we were the strongest species on our planet, but because we refused to stop moving forward. Krax listened with growing irritation, but also curiosity. Your weakness is not impressive, the warrior replied coldly. The human gave a small, tired smile. It is not weakness, he said. It is patience. Before Krax could respond, the human suddenly moved again. Despite the pain in his body, he stepped forward quickly, launching a fast strike aimed at the same area of Krax's armor he had hit earlier. The blow did little damage again, but it forced Krax to step backward slightly. The movement shocked the crowd once more. The human was injured. He was exhausted, but he was still fighting. High above them, Queen Zaryth slowly leaned forward on her throne again. Her eyes studied the battle with deep interest now. She had seen warriors who fought with strength, warriors who fought with speed, and warriors who fought with pure rage. But this human fought with something different. Every moment he survived seemed to change the battle little by little. Krax was becoming frustrated, his attacks less controlled than before. The human, even while injured, continued watching and learning. And slowly the queen began to realize something important. The human soldier was not trying to defeat Krax quickly. He was waiting for the moment when Krax would make a mistake. And the longer the fight continued, the more likely that moment would come. The arena had never felt this tense before. What had begun as a simple display of the Empire's power had slowly transformed into something far more uncomfortable for the Zaryth spectators. The human soldier was still standing, bruised, injured, and clearly exhausted, but still standing. General Krax stood several steps away from him, his massive chest rising slowly with controlled breaths. His glowing eyes burned with growing anger behind the dark visor of his helmet. For the first time in many years, the great warrior of the Zaryth Empire had been forced into a long fight by a creature he had once mocked as weak. Around the arena, thousands of spectators watched in uneasy silence. No one laughed now. The battle had stopped being entertainment. It had become something else, something confusing and unpredictable. The human soldier shifted his weight carefully. Pain shot through his ribs from the earlier impact, and he could feel the strain in his muscles. Every breath was heavier than the last, but his eyes remained focused on Krax, studying the alien warrior's movements with quiet concentration. General Krax finally took another step forward, his armored boots striking the arena floor with deep metallic echoes. "You are stubborn," Krax said coldly, his voice carrying across the battlefield. But stubborn creatures break, just like the rest. The human did not answer immediately. He wiped more dust and blood from his face, then slowly straightened his back despite the pain. "Maybe," he replied quietly, "but sometimes stubborn creatures outlast stronger ones." The words clearly irritated Krax. The giant warrior suddenly activated more systems in his battle armor. The red lights across the suit brightened, and a low mechanical hum filled the air as the armor shifted into a higher combat mode. Power surged through the heavy metal plates covering his body. The crowd reacted immediately. Many spectators recognized the change. Krax rarely used his armor's full strength against opponents inside the arena. It was unnecessary against most fighters. But now he was done playing games. "You have wasted enough of my time," Krax growled. "I will end this now." Without another warning, the giant warrior launched forward with terrifying speed. The sudden burst of power made his armor move faster than before. His massive arm swung downward like a falling meteor aimed directly at the human. The human barely moved in time. He jumped sideways, rolling across the arena floor as Krax's fist slammed into the metal surface with explosive force. The impact created a deep dent in the ground and sent a shockwave across the battlefield. Before the human could fully regain his footing, Krax attacked again. A brutal kick struck the human's side, throwing him violently across the arena. The human crashed against the floor and slid several meters before stopping. A loud gasp rose from the audience. That strike had been far more powerful than the previous attacks. The human lay still for a moment, struggling to breathe. The pain in his ribs had become far worse now. His vision blurred slightly as he tried to focus on the arena lights above him. Krax walked toward him slowly, each heavy step filled with confidence again. The warrior believed the fight was finally ending. "You see," Krax said loudly to the crowd, spreading his armored arms proudly. "This is the fate of those who challenge the Zaryth Empire." Some of the spectators began cheering again, though the sound was not as strong as before. Many of them kept watching the human carefully, unsure if the fight was truly over. The human soldier slowly pushed himself up again. His movements were slower now. One hand pressed tightly against his injured ribs while the other helped him stand. His breathing was heavy, and his face showed clear pain. But once again he stood. The arena became silent for the third time that day. General Krax stopped walking when he saw the human rise again. The irritation in his eyes turned into open fury. "You refuse to stay down," Krax growled. The human looked at him through tired eyes. "I told you," he said quietly. "Humans are stubborn." Krax's anger exploded. With a furious roar, he charged forward again, activating the full strength of his battle armor. His speed increased dramatically, his massive arms swinging in a brutal storm of attacks meant to crush the human completely. The arena floor shook with every strike. Metal screamed as Krax's armored fists smashed into the ground again and again. The human dodged as best as he could, but his injuries slowed him now. Several attacks passed dangerously close, forcing him to stumble backward repeatedly. The crowd watched in breathless silence. Then something changed. In his rage, Krax launched one final massive strike with all the strength of his armor behind it. His arms swung wide with overwhelming power, aiming to end the fight in a single crushing blow. The human barely avoided the attack by stepping aside at the last possible moment. Krax's fist missed him and slammed hard into the arena barrier. The impact caused the energy shield along the wall to flash violently. Sparks of blue light exploded across the surface as the barrier absorbed the force. For a brief moment, Krax's armored arm remained pressed against the wall. The energy feedback from the barrier forced several systems in his armor to flicker, and in that moment, something small became visible. A narrow section along the warrior's side armor briefly opened as the suit adjusted its power flow. It lasted only a second, but it was enough. The human saw it. His tired eyes suddenly sharpened with focus. Across the arena, several alien commanders leaned forward in shock. They had seen the same thing. A weak point. The human soldier slowly straightened despite the pain spreading through his body. For the first time since the fight began, a faint smile appeared on his face. Because everything that had happened until now, the dodging, the waiting, the patience, the endurance, had all been leading to this single moment. And General Krax had just revealed the one mistake that could change the entire battle. For a brief moment after the massive strike against the arena barrier, everything seemed frozen in time. Blue sparks still flickered across the energy shield where General Krax's armored fist had slammed into it. The giant warrior slowly pulled his arm away from the wall, irritated by the energy feedback that had passed through his armor systems. But while Krax was focused on recovering his balance, the human soldier had already seen something that changed the entire battle. That narrow opening in the armor. It had only appeared for a fraction of a second along the side of Krax's torso when the suit redirected power after the impact. Most spectators in the arena had not even noticed it. But the human had been watching every movement, every reaction of the armor, every small delay in the alien warrior's systems since the fight began. Now, he finally understood something important. Krax's armor was incredibly powerful, but it was also complex. When it used large amounts of energy during heavy attacks, some sections had to shift their power flow for a brief moment. And during that moment, the armor created a tiny weakness. The human slowly exhaled, forcing his tired body to stay steady. Pain still spread through his ribs and shoulders, and every breath reminded him how close he was to collapsing. But the calm focus in his eyes had returned stronger than before. Across the arena, General Krax turned back toward him, his anger now burning like fire. "You think you're clever," Krax growled, stepping forward again. "But your body is already failing. You cannot last much longer." The human wiped sweat from his face and said nothing. He simply adjusted his stance again, placing one foot slightly behind the other. To the spectators, it looked like the same defensive position he had used earlier. But this time something about his posture had changed. His movements were sharper. His eyes were fixed on a single point along Krax's armored side. High above them, Queen Zaryth noticed it immediately. Her sharp mind had been studying the battle carefully since the beginning. Now she leaned forward on her throne, watching the human with growing interest. "He has seen something," she murmured quietly to one of her commanders beside her. Down in the arena, Krax began moving again, determined to crush the human before his own frustration grew any worse. The giant warrior rushed forward with brutal speed, swinging his armored arm in another powerful strike. But the human did not retreat this time. Instead, he stepped forward. The sudden movement surprised everyone watching. Rather than dodging away from the attack, the human moved closer to Krax, slipping inside the path of the incoming blow. The massive strike passed behind him, missing his target by only inches. Before Krax could react, the human launched a quick strike toward the side of the warrior's armor. The impact created a small metallic sound, but did little damage. The crowd laughed again, believing the human had made a useless attempt. But the human did not stop. He stepped away immediately, forcing Krax to turn and attack again. The giant warrior swung his arm with even greater anger this time. The human dodged again at the last moment, barely avoiding the strike. Then he attacked the same area of armor once more. Again, the blow seemed meaningless against the heavy plating. But the human continued the pattern. Dodge, step in, strike the same spot, retreat, over and over again. The arena slowly fell silent as the strange rhythm of the fight became clear. General Krax attacked with overwhelming power, but every attack forced his armor to shift energy through its systems. And each time the armor adjusted, that narrow section near his side briefly weakened. The human had begun targeting that exact point again and again. At first, Krax did not understand what was happening. The strikes were too small to break his armor, and the human looked far too weak to cause real damage. But after several exchanges, the warrior began to notice the same repeated impact against the same section of his suit. "You think this will help you?" Krax roared angrily. He charged forward again, unleashing another storm of brutal attacks. The arena floor shook under the force of each strike, but the human kept moving. Despite his injuries, despite the exhaustion in his body, he refused to stop. His breathing grew heavier, his movements slower, yet his focus remained perfect. Every dodge was precise. Every counter-strike aimed at the same exact point. The crowd watched in growing disbelief. This was no longer just survival. This was strategy. The human soldier had turned the entire battle into a waiting game. He allowed Krax's strength to work against him, forcing the warrior to waste energy again and again while targeting the armor's weakest moment. Even the alien commanders in the arena stands had begun whispering nervously. They understood battle tactics very well, and what they were seeing was deeply unsettling. The human was not trying to overpower Krax. He was slowly breaking the warrior's advantage piece by piece. Another powerful strike from Krax smashed into the arena floor, sending sparks flying through the air. The human dodged to the side again, barely keeping his balance as pain shot through his injured ribs. But before Krax could fully recover, the human stepped in once more and struck the weak point with all the strength he had left. This time the impact created a slightly louder metallic crack. It was small, almost unnoticeable, but it was different. General Krax froze for a split second as a warning signal flashed inside his armor systems. The human saw the reaction immediately, and for the first time since the battle began, the small, exhausted soldier realized something incredible. The armor had finally started to weaken, and if he could land just a few more strikes, the greatest warrior of the Zaryth Empire might actually fall. A strange and heavy silence spread across the arena as the small metallic crack echoed from General Krax's armor. At first, many spectators believed they had imagined the sound, but the warriors and commanders sitting closer to the battlefield understood exactly what it meant. Something inside the armor had been damaged. Not destroyed, not broken completely, but weakened. General Krax stood frozen for a brief moment, his glowing eyes locked onto the human soldier standing in front of him. Inside, his helmet warning signals flashed across the display. A narrow section along his side armor had begun losing structural stability after the repeated impacts. The damage was still minor, but the fact that it existed at all was deeply disturbing. No opponent had ever managed to damage Krax's armor inside the arena before. Across from him, the human soldier struggled to remain standing. His chest rose and fell heavily with each breath. Sweat and dust covered his face, and the pain in his ribs was growing worse with every movement. His body had reached its limits long ago, but the quiet determination in his eyes had not disappeared. High above them, Queen Zaryth slowly rose from her throne. Her long cloak moved behind her as she stepped forward to the edge of the floating platform. The movement alone caused many spectators to notice her reaction. The queen rarely stood during arena battles, but this fight had clearly become something far more important than simple entertainment. Down in the arena, General Krax's anger finally exploded. "You think you have won something?" the giant warrior roared, his voice echoing like thunder through the arena. "You are still weak, human. One more strike is all it will take to end you." The human soldier did not respond with words this time. He simply straightened his back as much as his injured body allowed. His eyes remained fixed on the same damaged section of Krax's armor. The arena lights reflected across the battlefield as the two fighters slowly began moving toward each other again. Every spectator in the stadium leaned forward in tense silence. Even the smallest movement now felt important. General Krax activated the remaining power of his armor. Red energy lights flared across the metal plates as the suit pushed its systems to maximum strength. The ground beneath his feet trembled slightly as he prepared for one final attack. The human soldier knew exactly what was coming. He had studied Krax's patterns long enough to understand the warrior's mindset. The alien was furious now. His pride had been challenged in front of the entire empire, and an angry warrior was more dangerous, but also more predictable. Krax suddenly charged forward with a deafening roar, using every ounce of power his armor could provide. His massive body moved like a charging beast, his armored fist pulling back for one final crushing strike meant to destroy the human completely. The crowd gasped as the distance between them disappeared in seconds. For a brief moment, it looked like the human would finally be too slow to escape. His injured body struggled to react. His vision blurred slightly from exhaustion. But at the last possible moment, the human moved. Instead of retreating or dodging away, he stepped directly toward Krax. The unexpected motion confused the warrior for a split second. His massive fist swung downward with unstoppable force, but the human had already shifted his position slightly to the side. The enormous blow passed just over his shoulder, missing by the smallest possible distance. And in that exact moment, the human used the last strength left in his body. He drove his fist forward with everything he had. The strike landed directly on the weakened section of Krax's armor. For a single heartbeat, nothing happened. Then a loud metallic crack exploded across the arena. The damaged armor plate shattered apart as the human's final strike pushed through the weakened structure. Energy sparks burst outward as the armor systems failed in that section of the suit. The sudden loss of stability caused Krax's entire body to stumble forward. The giant warrior lost his balance and crashed heavily onto one knee. The sound of the impact echoed across the arena like a thunderclap. The entire stadium became completely silent. Thousands of alien spectators stared in disbelief at the unbelievable sight before them. The Empire's greatest warrior, the undefeated champion of the arena, had been forced to kneel by a single human soldier. The human stood only a few steps away, barely able to remain upright himself. His body trembled from exhaustion, but he did not fall. General Krax slowly lifted his head, shock visible in his glowing eyes. For the first time in many years, the warrior understood something he had never expected to learn. The human had not defeated him with greater strength. He had defeated him with patience. High above the arena, Queen Zaryth looked down at the battlefield with a completely different expression than before. There was no anger in her eyes, no desire for punishment. Instead, there was something far more serious: respect and concern. The queen slowly raised her hand. Immediately, the arena guards moved forward, stopping the battle before Krax could attempt another attack. The official signal lights turned blue again, declaring the fight finished. A wave of stunned whispers spread through the stadium. Queen Zaryth's voice finally echoed across the arena. "Enough," she declared calmly. All eyes turned toward the royal platform as she continued speaking. "This human has proven something important today," the queen said slowly. "Strength alone does not decide victory." The guards helped General Krax stand again, while medical teams rushed toward the injured human soldier. But even as they approached him, the human remained standing on his own feet. Queen Zaryth studied him carefully from above. One human soldier had just survived a battle against the Empire's greatest warrior. Not by chance, not by luck, but by intelligence, patience, and determination. And a quiet, unsettling thought slowly formed in the queen's mind. If one human could do this, then what might an entire army of humans accomplish? Across the arena, the alien commanders had begun whispering to each other again. The same realization had reached them as well. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. But after witnessing what had just happened inside the arena, many of them were beginning to suspect something far more dangerous. Humans might be the species that never stopped fighting, and wars against such enemies were rarely easy to win.